Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Rebecca and Rebecca. My name is Rebecca Yager, and my partner is Rebecca Reed. How you doing today, Rebecca?
I'm fantastic. It's a little warm here today, kind of humid, but
Uh,
it's all
Well,
right.
that's you're talking Texas too. We're having one of those summers, that's for
Yeah.
sure. Anyway, Rebecca and I, we like to read. We are writers. We're having fun reviewing books and talking to y'all about books. But I think our favorite thing is interviewing the authors. And today's author is the delightful Kate Angelo. Hi, Kate. Welcome.
Hi. Hi. Thank you guys for having me.
So, Kate, we're talking about Driving Force today, and we did the review of Driving Force last month. There it is. Thank you. And it's part of the Elite Guardians collection, and these are characters based on Lynette Eason's previous series, The Elite Guardians. If you haven't read that, read it. And it really helps as we go into this new series here. And Kate's the lead-off author, and we'll talk more about this as we go on. So, Kate, again, welcome, and we're glad you're here.
Thank you guys so much for having me. And thank you for your wonderful review. I listened to your podcast and I really loved it. Thank you. Made my heart happy.
Well, the book made us happy too.
Oh,
So
good.
I enjoyed it a lot. I really like to read romantic suspense, even though I don't write it. I tend to kind of lean into some of that suspense stuff, even in my historicals and my contemporaries. So I appreciated that. And I am a really big animal fan. So
Yeah.
Boss was probably my favorite character, as I mentioned in the review. And I have my Scottish dog necklace on in
Aw.
for Boss today.
Aw. Thank you.
So can you tell us a little bit about because this is a an interesting way to become an author. It's a little bit different model than what most people have are familiar with or followed in their path to becoming published. So if you could tell us a little bit about Sunrise and the deal, what's the deal with the lead author and how does it work with, having Lynette Eason and your name on the cover, some of that information.
Yeah, we'll start out with that. I'll kind of hold it up a little bit more. I know you have audio, but you also do video. So it does say Lynette Easton presents Kate Angelo. And part of this is a way to do something different. It is a way to get new voices out there, but really establish a mentorship with a publishing company. So Lindsay Harrell and Susan May Warren had this idea to start a publishing company, and they knew that they needed to do it a little differently. And so they set out to mentor authors. And so what you do is, as an author, if it's your genre and you have actually written a book, you don't have to be published, you don't have to be agented or anything like that. But if you've at least been able to finish writing a book from beginning to end, whether you've done anything with it or not, and they open auditions, then you can audition to write with a lead author in their series. So Lynette opened her auditions to her Elite Guardians World, which is a 4-book series, and she had written in 3 characters that she always wanted to come back and visit. And one of them is Christina, who is the lead character in my book, Driving Force. And so she set these characters up and never had an opportunity to go back to them. So with Sunrise, she's able to audition for romantic suspense authors and then choose the very best, and then they place them in order however they think their stories will go, or maybe by ability. I'm not really sure what their criteria is, but they set them in order of the books coming out. And then from there, they really help you plot, plan, learn the writing craft, learn things that you might not know, even going to school or even listening to other podcasts or reading craft books. They really help you just hands-on book coach, apply those things to what you're doing. So the story idea is my idea. The premise is my idea. The plot was fleshed out in a brainstorming session with Susie, Lindsay Harrell, and then Lynette Easton, and the other 2 authors, which are Sammy A. Abrams and Kelly Underwood. So we all got together and we plotted out our books together, learned how to order things and how to slow it down so that you're not constantly dragging the reader through action, 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 or slogging through romance, 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 backstory, backstory, so you're learning that pacing in your work. And then they kind of send us home and they're like, off you go write this book. And then Lynette would read our pages and offer comments and help. And if we got stuck, I got myself stuck in my plot. And I remember having to call her, and our timing was all off. And the only time I could talk to her was at my marina. And so in the background were all these boats that were grinding up and down and squeaking. And I'm trying to tell her, and I'm trying to imagine this. And I'm I have to write this in a book someday, the sounds of this marina, But anyway, so she was willing to just get on the phone with me and help me get through this plot hole problem that I was having, and really help me understand where I was going wrong. And then we go through the typical editing process from there, where we submit it to the publisher. The publisher gives us an editorial letter, and then we go through that whole process again. And so in a way, it could take longer, but we do have regular deadlines to keep. And we have a lot of people who read through it and try to make it the very best book possible. And that's Sunrise's goal, is to not only to bring in new authors and elevate them and give them an opportunity to launch their author career, but really to never put out a bad book. And if that means write, rewrite, or push the book and give the author enough time to really feel comfortable with what they're putting out there. And that is the key, I think, that Sunrise is doing differently, is let's make sure that the author has the most support. And then they help us with our social media as well. They help us promote our book, they promote the book, and then they really teach us how to get new subscribers, newsletter subscribers, and things like that. So that's how it kind of all works. And that's why Lynette's name is on there. Her story world, her help, could not have made it such a huge success without her and everyone else at Sunrise.
All right. Yeah, it's quite the process. As you know, I've started this as well. So I've been through some of the things that Kate mentioned, and it's been a fantastic experience so far, and I can't wait to see what we end up with in our season, because we're doing the historicals. So, but this season, so you guys are season 3, correct? So you're
we're season 3. We're season 3, but we ended up publishing before Heartspin, which is season 2, right. And so we're a little ahead. So the season is really just how they keep us bunched up. It's not really it doesn't have to do anything with the order of publication necessarily. Right. So
right, yeah, which there's a lot. There's been, because the first season was Susie May Warren with her Deep Haven setting, and there were 6 books in that one, and then there are 2 so far that are set to be published in the Heart's Bend, which is Rachel Houck, and then season 3 has the 3 novels. But you're writing is it a novella that you're doing with the same?
So I didn't mention this also, but part of launching the author career is the opportunity, if it goes well and you like it, that you can stay with Sunrise as your publisher. I mean, you can branch out if you want to, but once we got our original manuscripts turned in, and they could kind of really see, this went well, and find out if Lynette had time in her schedule to mentor us more. We were offered 2 more contracts. One is to do a Christmas novella where we're going to wrap up some of the story. So you can see some of the characters come back, and we had left some unfinished business, and we want to go ahead and wrap that up. And then we have another contract to write a whole new, it's the same Elite Guardians, but we're taking and separating them from Columbia, South Carolina, where these are based, and we're moving them to Savannah, Georgia. And we're going to have new characters, new everything, new setting, and we're going to do it in Savannah. So that'll be great.
I can't wait.
Yeah.
That sounds
exciting.
fantastic.
Yeah.
What you're talking about, Kate, is the community, how important for writers. Writing is fairly solitary, but it is so important to develop the community around you of other writers who understand the voices in your head, and that can support you and also mentor you. And I think that's just so critical for anybody who wants to have a writing career.
Yeah, absolutely. Sunrise has become more of a family and less of just a publishing company. And I think in that we have that opportunity to really reach out across seasons and be friends with people who are writing in other genres or who maybe are writing in the same genre, but they're in a different season with a different lead author. I have been so blessed to be also mentored by Lisa Phillips, who is our season 5 author for Last Chance County. And it is just her natural gifting to just jump in and help people. And she has taught me a lot, and she has just been there when I have a quick question about something. And she's so encouraging. She's a great writer. I mean, I just aspire to write as quickly as she does, to be able to get outside of my head, I think, and just write the story instead of thinking and overthinking and researching. And you guys know what that's about, right? But so that community
Yes.
has been great. It's been wonderful.
I can attest to that because Lisa has actually helped me already a lot too. And
Yeah.
even though I don't write exactly the same
Hmm.
thing, it's still, she's been very welcoming, as you mentioned, and just
Yeah,
always willing to, like, anything that she can help you with if you have a question or whatever. She's really good at that. So
definitely.
what kind of advice would you give then to aspiring authors to help them improve their writing or learn, the craft and that kind of thing?
Well, I know it seems kind of cliche, but to read lots and lots of books, lots of genres, and not just read with the ear to entertain, but read with the ear to learn something. What did you like? What did you not like? What really resonated with you? There's the ongoing joke about how our characters just stand around sighing all the time and blowing out breath because sometimes you're like, you want to explain that they're frustrated or that they're exasperated or something, and you can't really name the emotion, so you're trying to find a way to express it. So I really listen to books, audiobooks a lot, but I really look and search for, how did they describe that? Did they over describe it? Did they just say it in 2 words that suddenly made all the difference in the world? Like something as simple as saying he shouldered his way through the door. That tells you exactly, he's barreling through the door. And the other day I'm standing there trying to come up with, how did he get through the doorway really fast? Like, how do I explain this to people? And I could have just used that little phrase. And so learning from what other authors are doing, it doesn't mean to copy them or anything, but learning from them and what works and what doesn't work, what's successful about their books and what isn't. Because sometimes we get so wrapped up in structure and plotting and planning. And are you a plotter? Are you a pantser? Are you a mixture? What software can I use? And sometimes it just comes down to tell the story and tell the story in the best way possible. And sometimes use the most vivid words possible. So I was listening to a podcast with Dean Koontz the other day, and he said that there was a book he wrote, and in the book, I can't remember exactly what happened. I think it was maybe like somebody's throat was cut or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it was, but they were saying that, oh, that's so graphic, I can't read that. And he's like, well, can you go back to the story and tell me, like, how long was the scene where that happened, where I think it was the murder or whatever. And they went back and it was 2 sentences long, and yet people, like, 2 sentences, and people felt like it drug them through this horrific scene, and it was 2 sentences. And I'm like, that's amazing, right? To be able to, so you can learn things like that will resonate with the reader, that will stick with them long lasting, like that they'll always remember. And that's my key to writing, is something that you'll remember, like where you'll be like, oh, I really miss Boss. I'm gonna go read that book again so I can fall in love with Boss.
Yeah.
And that's funny because I'm not a big dog lover, and I love Boss. Sorry for those who are pet people, but Boss was great.
Yeah.
He was a wonderful character.
Well, the thing is, you made him an actual character, because
Mhm.
I've read a lot of books with dogs, or other animals, and they're just sort of props,
Yeah.
they're there, but they don't really have a lot of personality. I mean, they're a dog or a cat or a horse or a whatever,
Hmm.
but you don't connect with them. Boss is an actual character. we connect with Boss. Like Boss has a purpose beyond just being a dog or being, nearby or whatever. He's integral to the part. You take Boss away and the whole story is not there. Like it's just different. And so that's what I like, because I write about animals all the time. So I'm going to be studying how you did this. I can make because I have a horse in my story. So let's see if I can't take some of your
him a character.
Make him a character.
Yeah, well, I think that goes back to the days of watching The Neverending Story. Do you remember crying over his horse? And it's a horse, it's an animal, but he was so loved. And it was Archeo. How do you say his name? Archeo. There you go.
Yeah.
And he was, and I think like me experiencing that emotion, it was like, you need to make your readers love that. But I will also tell you that as authors on the back end, we were joking about this. So Kelly Underwood is the author of the third book in the Elite Guardians collection called Defending Honor that comes out in October. And we're writing our Christmas novellas together. And she's like, I have to keep track of this backpack. Like I have this backpack and I'm like, I keep forgetting to keep track. And I was like, I know, I kept doing that with Boss. I was like, I got to keep track of the dog and I got to keep track of, and so you kind of forget that, you have these items that you have to keep track of. And a character like Boss, so he's for anyone who hasn't read the book or knows about the book, he's a Belgian Malinois who is a retired military working dog, and he's continued training and he's altered his training a little bit more. I did a lot of research talking with some of our local animal trainers and some of our local search and rescue teams, and they had explained that generally you teach them one thing, but if they have an aptitude, you can teach them multiple things. And since Boss goes above and beyond all other dogs, I really wanted him to have an aptitude for multiple things and that his instincts were very high. And so he can detect explosives and drugs, and he can be an attack dog, and he can detect this military weapon, or this chemical weapon that is in the book. And so far, he's the only one who had encountered it. So he's the only one who could really detect it. And so even though at first he's not really sure what he's sensing, he just knows something's off. And so through that, I really learned that these dogs have a lot of personality. They can do a lot of different things, but you really need to make sure that you bring them into the story more instead of just making them like a tool, like the car that they drive or the tool the gun that they have strapped to that's just there whenever you need it. And I think that has made the story, a lot of people have said, Boss is my favorite character. And I'm like, I'm not sure if that's a good thing or not, but it definitely feels great to me because he was so fun to write and such a fun character. So part of writing craft is giving those animals feelings and making everybody fall in love with them too.
Well, I have a lot of work in front of me to make my horse as good as your dog, I think. I don't know if I can quite pull it off, but we'll see.
Yeah.
So, So, like, how did you get started with writing in general? Like, did you always want to write? Was this something you from childhood you knew you wanted to be a writer, or, tell us that story.
Well, as a kid, I didn't really know that I wanted to be. I knew that I wanted to be a writer after I started reading. I fell in love with reading, and I've kind of told the story before. It's not the best story, but my older teenage sister, brought home Misery by Stephen King, and I picked it up and read it as like an elementary school, and it's not that bad. I mean, it's okay, but it really set me on the course of enjoying character-driven, suspenseful stories. And so suspense means different things to different people. Some people think suspense is they're hanging by their fingertips on a ledge and they're about to drop and the character is in a pickle and you really need to get them out of this pickle. And that is great suspense. But in some cases, there's a book that I read that takes place over one day, and it's one of the most suspenseful books I have ever read. And all it is a story about a woman who is having her 40th birthday party, And her husband, unbeknownst to her, is trying to surprise her by getting her daughter from like Europe, someplace in Europe, I think, back to surprise her at this birthday party because she didn't think she could be there. And and anyway, so at the beginning of the story, the plane crashes and he doesn't know if she made her flight or not. And so the whole time is this suspense of, should he tell her? Should he not tell the wife? He thinks his daughter is maybe dead, and then he's trying to convince himself to find a way to tell her, but he doesn't want to ruin her day. But what if she's really not dead? And he tells her, and there's this anguish, and he ruins the day. And so there's all these different things that are emotions, and it's seriously the most suspenseful story I've ever read. And there's not any. They don't describe the plane crash. They don't describe anything but emotions and what the character's going through. And it clearly shows you that suspense can be different things. So suspense for someone like Stephen King, where there could be violence or graphic things that he writes, or things that are uncomfortable, killings and things like that. Really, it's the suspense that the character's going through, that you're walking with them. How is this guy going to escape from in misery? How's the guy going to escape? And I mean, he can't move, and she's crazy, and everything's going to set him off. And what is going to happen here? And that really set me on the course for wanting to write. Unfortunately, a lot of people said you can't make any money being a writer, and I didn't know that that's okay. That's okay if you don't make. A lot of writers don't make very much money, but they still put out some really amazing stories that are life-changing for people. And so I didn't really pursue it until around the COVID time. I always felt like God was like, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this. And I was waiting for that right moment when I felt like God was like, okay, ready, set, go. And then I would just go when he said to go. And so that's what happened right around, we were pretty much in the middle of that quarantining. And I was like, I'm just going to go into my office and really write the story that God has been telling me. He's been telling me the story, and he's been telling me the scenes, and he's been telling me the words. I'm going to sit down and write it. And so I did. And then I was like, I'm going to find some critique partners. I'm going to see what they think about it. I'm going to, find. And so God just slowly brought it all together for me, where I had written that book. And I had this great story of basically finding out about the auditions like 2 days. It was 2 or 3 days before the auditions closed. And I had to throw it all together and submit it. And then I made it to the next round. And then Lynette called me, and she called to say, congratulations, if you want this, you can do this. And I was like washing the dishes, and I saw it on my watch. And so I didn't answer the call. So then I just missed her call completely. And so certain things that just all came together, that it just surprised me that I was able to actually get to where I'm at right now today by listening to God. And I know without a doubt that I could have been writing this whole time. I could have been trying to publish. I could have been doing all of these things, but it's in God's timing that this is the way it's going to work. And other things have happened along the way, like agents that I just knew from something completely different, completely outside of the realm, that there are agents out there who would be willing to potentially take me on if I wanted to do that. And so lots of authors are not in the position to go, maybe I will, maybe I won't. They're like, I need to get an agent, and they're pushing to get an agent. So I really just say, that's a really long way to say, work on reading and writing. And then also, if you're trying to get yourself, if you want to be a writer, then work on writing most of all, but really trying to pursue what God is putting ahead of you, and not trying to jump out ahead of him, which is the hardest thing in the entire world for people who are fast paced, trying to move along like I am sometimes. But that's a lesson I've learned. So I kind of always wanted to be a writer. I really wanted to be a marine biologist when I grew up. And that was really difficult. I wish I had more people in my life to encourage me on both of those things. But I did study marine biology in college, and now I'm a writer and a minister, and I do nothing with that at all, other than my daughter and I we volunteer at Wonders of Wildlife in Springfield, Missouri, which is named America's Best Aquarium, actually. So plug for them.
There
There you go. So
Someplace
you
to
do.
take my granddaughters. Let's
Yeah.
go.
You really should. It's an amazing aquarium. It's beautiful.
So tell us a little bit about your childhood growing up. I think there's probably some stories there too.
Yeah, there's definitely a story there. My first published book is co-written with my husband. It's Forsaken, and I think it's on Kindle Unlimited to read for free. It's something that we really just use as a ministry tool. We wrote it and published it so that when we go to speak somewhere, we can give that book to people, or sell that book to people to fund our ministry work that we do with marriages and families. We have a prayer ministry, and we have a nonprofit that is strengthening and encouraging marriages and families. And that is our goal. And so as a child, I had a really traumatic childhood that is many of the events are in the book, but not all of them are in the book. And it was a very traumatic childhood for me. And I ultimately went into foster care and then aged out of the foster care system, which is why this is so important to me to minister to marriages and families, because a lot of times children end up in foster care out of a broken home and a broken family. And these are the things that are really important to us to constantly pray over these kids, to pray over the caseworkers and the parents, and to really try to lift them up and build them up as best we can. So my childhood wasn't super great, which is how I probably ended up with a copy of Misery as like a 8, 9, 10-year-old or something like that. I heard someone a couple of days ago say that those who fail quickly learn quicker than everybody else. So if you mess up your life early on and you learn from your mistakes, then you can potentially do better next time. You can succeed further in the future, if that makes sense. So I became a Christian, what I consider late in life, but not really. I was just in my mid-20s when I really understood God and forgave him. And so that's really always a journey of faith, and not I'm a Christian, I'm fine now. It's a journey of faith and walking. And those are some things that we speak on as a public speaker. So we'll go and minister to people about forgiveness, about trauma, about why they should get involved in foster care ministry, about the marriage, protecting your marriage, learning about marriage from a young child all the way up. So we're trying to accomplish that. And from that, it has stemmed our involvement in something called the Community Marriage Initiative, where in our community, we're actively working to lower the divorce rate. So we're taking steps to lower the divorce rate in our community. And that is alongside everything else that we're doing writing wise and things like that. So all of that stems from the pain of my childhood. And I grew up in Texas, so we have that in common.
And you bring part of this, as you said, into the book with Christina's past, the heroine of the book. And I really liked Christina, and it was neat, besides Boss, you like Christina, and how you bring her through that. And there's a sweet resolution towards the end of the book with her sister, so to speak, on that. So that was, now that I'm knowing you better, I can see why that touched me so much, because it is through your real life and your experiences that you had. Another thing I think Rebecca and I really appreciate in the book is Gray, who's our hero, and him being in a wheelchair. And I think my favorite thing was Christina barely saw the wheelchair. So he was a he's a man and he's a hero.
Yeah.
And he's accomplished. And so what gave you the idea to bring that element in with Gray?
I really feel like that was God-given, but it also stemmed from a lot of different things that built in up to the technology behind nanorobotic technology that is actually accomplishing things like repairing nerve damage for people who maybe have lost their use of a limb, and it has to be in a certain way. It's nerve damage, not necessarily a muscle disorder or something else. And so nanorobotic technology is really starting to grow. They're using it in brain therapies and things like that right now. And then also creating synthetic chemical weapons is something that is happening now too, because most things to create almost everything that you need to create something like sarin or VX is highly regulated. So you can't just go and buy the materials and then put them together. But there are people who are trying to synthetically create the materials that you would normally need to buy to put them together for a weapon. And so I think I just put it all together, and God really just gave me that the story premise. So part of part of hearing about the audition late and not really having a story, I just prayed before I went to bed, and I said, God, please, you have to give me a story that is worthy of Christina and Lynette Easton and this book. And so I woke up the next day, and it was just there, and it was that I saw that he was a veteran who was in a wheelchair, and then I was like, okay, so why would he need protection? And I did not want him to need protection because he was in a wheelchair, because he doesn't need protection because he's in a wheelchair. He's fully capable of protecting himself. And it's always nice to have somebody watch your six, as they say, but it really was important to me to find another way for him to require that. And so I really felt like, wouldn't it be funny if initially people kind of were like, okay, he needs us to bodyguard him because of what happened to him in the first scene of the book or the first chapter of the book. But that isn't really what he needs. What happens is he ends up needing someone to protect his dog so he can go through this surgery. And so then I was like, if you take this really highly accomplished, really disciplined woman who has achieved a lot in her life, and then you have her bodyguard a dog, like what would that be like, And so those are the things that I kind of put together, and I wasn't really sure how it was all going to play out with his surgery and things like that, but I just knew that I didn't think that Gray would really ever fully be able to walk because they didn't need to. He didn't need to walk to be any different. He didn't need that in his life to be different. And so I'm hoping and praying that I did justice to him as a character, and for people who are really living with disabilities, to really show that what you first see is not the package. You know what I mean? And there's so many people walking around with things that we don't know about, that are just as difficult that they're dealing with, like maybe chronic fatigue or pain or something like that you don't notice right away. And so I really wanted Christina to sort of be that way, that she's talking to him as a person and they're having conversations so much that she just kind of forgets. So there's a scene where she sort of kicks his wheelchair to kind of save him from getting a bullet. And when she does it, she doesn't do it in any way other than she would shove somebody and jump over them and protect them. She doesn't think about it that way. And so he kind of he gets angry because he thought of it that way, that she was disrespecting his wheelchair. And so he has to really work through that, like, well, what would I have done? How would I have protected somebody? And so those are little things that I kind of mentally walked through, that they could kind of work through together. And I know that people don't want to not be seen in their wheelchair, but they don't want to be known for that. They don't want to be, that's who I am. They want to be known for who they are, and this is part of who I am. And that's what I hope to portray.
I think you did a really good job.
Thank you.
I mean, that was exactly just what you just said is exactly how I took his character.
Good.
And that we talked about that on the review. I thought it was very well done how you handled the the wheelchair and the handicapped issue, or the idea of, just how are we going to deal with this idea of being in a wheelchair but not really being handicapped, because he wasn't. And that, I thought you did a great job. Of course, the car was really
The car.
cool.
The car.
Yeah. So I know on your previous review you mentioned that I had written a blog post about it, and I have to say I got the idea from Kelly Underwood. She was like, I think I'm going to start keeping track of all the research that I'm doing for my book and posting it as I go along, or at least posting it afterward. And I was like, I really should, because the car is so interesting. And I got the idea from my husband, was really helping me with a lot of these little details, things like radio communication and technical stuff. So I have our whole family is highly technical, super nerdy geek people. And so I can call my one of my sons is a biochemical engineer. And so I'm like, okay, let's talk about this. And my other son, he knows that stuff just because that's part of what he learns. And then he is former military. And so I can really talk to him about certain things. And my husband he knows all about like the things that he remembered from his sixth grade physical science class are astounding. Like whoever that teacher is needs to be just like the poster child for all teachers, because he remembers so much from that class. And then he knows about ham radios and shortwave radios and all this stuff. So all of them really helping me. And so I was talking to him about how difficult it's going to be when you say, quick, get into the car. And you're like, something as little as getting in and out of a car, and then trying to explain that to someone. And he's like, I watched the testimony of a girl who was I guess she was like I'm not really sure what the term, an equestrian gymnastics, I think is what she did. So you're doing gymnastics on the back of a moving horse. Mm-hmm. And she had a really bad accident and fell and severed her spine. And now she is also a paraplegic. And so he sent me some videos of her testimony, and I realized her husband is someone I had watched on YouTube. Part of my geek coming out is a guy, his YouTube channel is called Jerry Riggs Everything. And he takes cell phones and he checks their durability and things like that. And so super famous YouTube guy, and they're married, and they did some videos on how she lives in her wheelchair. And part of that was getting in and out of a vehicle. I mean, as a woman, I don't know if it's maybe just a woman thing, but I hate pumping my gas. I'm like, my husband I was like, okay, you have to take out the trash and pump my gas. And he's like, all right, but you have to do the laundry and fold my laundry. I'm like, done. So those are our two things that we did in our relationship before we decided that we were going to work. And so, and she had said getting gas was one of the most difficult things for her. And so if she drove a Tesla, she wouldn't have to get gas. She could just plug her car in when she got home. She doesn't have to get in and out twice, which is something we just take for granted. And that really stuck with me. I was like, I need to put that in the book somehow. And so, so we ended up looking at some other Tesla Model X videos of people who have actually put robotic arms into their Teslas. And there's several different ways to do it, but the ones that have the Falcon doors that rise up like the wings, those are the ones that have robotic arms come down, take their chair and put it in. They don't have to dismantle the chair. Some people dismantle it and put it in the seat with them, and other people are now getting these robotic arms. Not only that, but the Tesla does lower its suspension so that it's easier for them to get in and out of a car. And then the suspension can go back up after that. And there's just so many neat features that are actually in that specific model of the Tesla that worked, that I just had to put it into the book. And I'm a car person anyway, so I really feel like Tesla should give me a Model X for all the plug they're getting, right?
Of course. That'd be awesome. We could all come and check it out.
For research, right?
Yeah. No, that's cool. That's it. It was really neat. I mean, it was all, I mean, and I know it went through edits and it wasn't that pretty when you first started, but it turned out super well done, and it just, everything fit in there seamlessly. And I applaud the way you were able to get all of this information in
Mhm.
and not take away from the romance or the suspense plot that was going on. And I thought, you just did a fantastic job, getting it all fitted in there so that it seemed like it was in the perfect place and it didn't
Right.
distract from the story. And it just
Right.
added to. And that was really good.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of a challenge with this particular book, that the romance thread can be a little bit heavier and the action part can be a little on the lower end for what some people will expect. Some would like to have maybe 70% running for their lives, dodging bullets and danger versus, and then this particular book, I think, kind of levels it out really well.
Mhm.
And there's a mystery, and then there's a little bit of a mystery. There's a little bit of the suspense and danger side of that, and there's the suspense of their relationship, I think. And then so it's kind of all working together, and then there's a bigger spiritual arc. But when you have a hero who's in a wheelchair, there's a limited amount of things that you can really do as far as the action and adventure. That they can be on the run for their lives, but it's different. It adds a different feel to the whole story. And so some of the suspense and danger had to be constructed around what you could do without really putting you in an impossible situation with your hero and his inability to walk, so that it could accomplish. I mean, I think Gray as a character could stand up and run, probably, if he really needed to, if his legs would cooperate. But I also did not want to do that. I didn't want it to be like, he has to come out of his chair in order to accomplish what he does. He's perfectly capable in his chair. And so I'm trying not to spoiler it. So I'm sorry if that's very vague for some of the listeners, but it does mean that you have to think about things a little bit differently. He might not be able to, be thrown over a cliff and hanging from his fingers, because he probably wouldn't make it, or like different, so anyway, so that's just a little bit of some of the differences in how you handle suspense whenever you have a hero who is in his wheelchair, and things like driving and moving around your house and going in and out of different rooms and things all happen differently. So yeah.
It was well done. And I think, you kind of offset some of the, maybe the hero and heroine aren't quite in as much, like they're not constantly being bombarded by something, but with Boss in there and all this other technology, it really was, I didn't miss it at all. I mean, personally. Sometimes I feel like suspense writers can go too much that way too, because as a reader, it's like, I need a break. I need to be able to sit down and have a conversation and take a breath and have dinner, and do some of those things where I can take a break. Okay, now I'm ready to go off and run some more, or whatever we're doing, but there are times when I feel like that there are books where it's like things just happen and happen and happen and happen. I really have a pet peeve for people who things happen, and they're all negative, and things just get darker and darker, and there's like no hope in it at all. And most of the time, these are more general market books, but like, I don't like, personally, it's just too much for me. I prefer action, take a break, action, take a break. And I think that's what Driving Force is like.
Right. The pacing is very good, and it's very critical for, you kept the book moving at a nice pace, but we could still breathe a little bit.
Yeah. Thank you. I know that as a writer, we might not necessarily talk about this particular craft thing, but it's exactly what you're talking about, is that, you need your heroes to succeed sometimes and fail. And you kind of need to balance that out, where, that they're going to make a mistake and put themselves in the middle of danger and potentially get out of that danger, whether there's collateral damage from it or not, but they're going to get out of that danger. But if they're constantly, it's negative, 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 like you said, and there's no time to even to process what they just went through, then it doesn't feel very realistic. And so that was something else that I learned. There was a few times where it's probably also my personality, but I would forget that this thing just happened and they haven't even talked about it or thought about it. And they need to. They can't just go, okay, what's the next step now? They need to stop, and as a person, whether it's internal or external, they just need to process their feelings and their emotions. I mean, think about when you're driving down the road and somebody cuts you off and it just kind of makes you upset. Sometimes you say something to the person sitting next to you, like, do you believe this person? I do it on the phone sometimes. I'm talking on the phone and I'm like, what's with this guy in front of me or something? And and you're like, you're verbalizing it. So, so that you can move on, I think, so that you can just be done with it and have somebody empathize, or, and I think that that's the key. I read the other day that the one of the best things about reading books is it teaches humans empathy. It teaches us how to empathize with characters. And if your characters don't have any feelings or thoughts or anything that they're struggling with or any character growth, then you don't really learn empathy from them. And I think that's something that I really try to do, is help you relate to my character in a certain way, and then also help you grow from that a little bit as well.
I like that. So how can we get in touch with you? How can readers find you so that we can find out what's coming up next for Kate Angelo?
So the best way to find me really is to just go to my website, which is kateangelo.com, and it's Kate and then Angel with an O. And it will give you all my social medias, and you can subscribe to my newsletter. I say on there that I won't bombard you with newsletters because I really am not great at sending a newsletter yet. So I need to get better at that. But it's true. I need to get better at sending out some newsletters once a month or so. But that is where when you're subscribed to the newsletters, if I run a contest, I pull from there anyway. And so if you're already subscribed and I have a contest, you might get an email saying, hey, you won something. And they're like, wait, what? And I just do that as a way to reward people who are in the community. So stay tuned, though, because I think that there's some exciting community stuff that's going to happen outside of the normal social media, but be more social, if that's enough of a little hint. So you might want to subscribe. You'll get a little bit of an information about a way that you can connect to some of the best Christian suspense authors in the business on a one-on-one level, and not have to feel like you're just another social media person, So it's kind of vague, but I'm working on this, and I'm hoping that I can get it all set up and it won't take too much time away from the actual writing.
So that's at kateangelo.com. Sign up for the newsletter. I'm in, Kate. I love romantic suspense.
I think I already, I think I subscribed. Pretty sure I did.
Yeah.
I haven't, I will. So,
thank you.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, double check that. Thank you guys so much for having me. It's been a wonderful opportunity to talk about the book and some other writing things. And I just really appreciate what you guys are doing.
And we'll look forward to the novella and the next Elite Guardians adventure that they're going to have in a new place. I'm excited about that.
So,
and we're looking forward to Kelly's book in October, right?
Yes. So right now you can get Driving Force, which as I've looked, and Amazon has kept it on sale for $4.99 on ebook. So if you haven't got it yet, you should grab it. I don't know when the sale's going to end. So if you want the ebook, grab that quickly. And then we have Impending Strike, that is by Sammy A. Abrams. It was released last month, oh gosh, we're in August now, aren't we? So it was in June. Right? Yeah. And that book is really great. It's completely different writing style and approach to the story, fast-paced suspense that you're just going to love hearing Lizzie and Charlie's story. And then, of course, like you said, in October, we're going to have Defending Honor by Kelly Underwood. And this is one of those ones where I get to be a part of the plotting and brainstorming. And I've been able to bounce ideas off the wall with Kelly a little bit and work through it. And I'm so excited for her story that I just can't even tell you that I'm like, as a, not just an author, but as a reader, I'm really excited to read her story too. So all of these are great, and they'll introduce you to some really great writers. So you definitely want to read all of the Elite Guardian collection and anything by Sunrise.
Yes, I agree.
Right?
Yes, totally. So yeah, well, thank you so much. We appreciated your willingness to come on the show with us, so the podcast, the YouTube channel, however you choose to partake of this content. And so good luck and best wishes on the next projects. I know you just turned in a manuscript, you said, so that's awesome.
Yeah.
And hopefully maybe we'll catch up with you again later on.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll see y'all next time on
See you next
Rebecca and
time.
Rebecca. Bye-bye.